10 Extremely Embarrassing Architectural Failures. Welcome to our list of 25 incredible architectural failures throughout history. The following collection of architectural failures is an eclectic mix. They range from the most poorly designed and downright dangerous, to some very ugly architectural projects throughout history. 1. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is probably the most famous example. We'll kick off our list of architectural failures with probably the most famous one. The Tower of Pisa, if you don't already know, is a freestanding bell tower associated with the Cathedral of Pisa. During construction, the tower started to tilt. A combination of inadequate foundations and unsuitable ground ultimately led to the tower's present-day situation. Over the following centuries, the tower has continued to sink at around 1 mm a year. The structure was stabilized by remedial work between 1993 and 2001, which reduced the angle of the tilt. 2. Tacoma Narrows Bridge in Washington was another embarrassing architectural failure. This example of architectural failures is one of the more catastrophic on our list. When it opened in 1940, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge was the third longest suspension bridge in the world. It was closed a mere 4 months later when it spectacularly collapsed. In an attempt to try to keep costs down, cheap girders were chosen. This decision ultimately doomed the bridge. Shortly after its construction, the bridge began to buckle and sway along its length, even with the normal winds, earning it the nickname Galloping Gertie. 3. Another embarrassing architectural failure was Kemper Arena, Kansas. The Kemper Arena is an indoor stadium in Kansas City that opened its doors in 1976. One notable feature of the building was its trussed roof. In June of 1979, a heavy storm bombarded the city and the stadium's roof couldn't take the strain. Thankfully, the stadium was vacant at the time and no one was injured. The roof had been designed to release rainwater slowly to keep from inundating the nearby West Bottoms area. Sadly, this unfortunate design allowed rainwater to collect and pool on the roof. It sagged, adding extra capacity for rainwater to collect, until it finally failed. The roof was also suspended from hangers and the placement of the bolts had been miscalculated. Once the chain reaction ensued, the whole thing came tumbling down. 4. The Aon Center incident could have been avoided. This impressive tower is Chicago's third tallest building and opened in 1974. It was originally called the Standard Oil Building. On completion, the tower was a feast for the eyes. The building's designers chose to clad the entire external facade in Italian Carrara marble. And hey, why not? This form of marble is much thinner than regular cladding materials, and in 1974, before the building was even completed, one slab detached. This rogue piece crashed onto the roof of the neighboring Prudential Center. After exposure to Chicago's large temperature swings, much of the facade began to deteriorate to dangerous levels. The changes in temperature from summer to winter caused the thin marble slabs to bow outward, resulting in permanent deformation and a loss in strength. Not ideal, to say the least. $80 million. 5. Secret Intelligence Service building is not the most inconspicuous of buildings. Unlike other entries on our list of architectural failures, this one isn't necessarily structurally unsound. The SIS building is the home of Britain's Secret Intelligence Service, the MI6, and where James Bond goes to the office in the fictional series. 6. The Lotus Riverside Complex tragedy was completely avoidable. In June of 2009, one of the buildings at the Lotus Riverside Complex, Shanghai, collapsed, killing one worker. Rushed and low-quality construction techniques ultimately doomed the project. All 15 stories of the apartment block, one of 11 in the complex, was almost completed when it fell. The collapse cost not only a worker's life but the dreams of hopeful families and investors. Half of the units had already been sold at around $60,000 apiece. Understandably, many of the prospective tenants demanded a refund. 7. A window actually fell off the CNA Center in Chicago. Opened in 1972, the CNA Center is a high-rise, 44 stories, building in Chicago. The building was designed by Graham Anderson, Probst, and White, and is a vibrant red, so you can't really miss it. In 1999, a large piece of a cracked window came loose and plummeted from the 29th floor. Sadly, the accident caused a single fatality. It was also not the first time falling glass from the building had struck someone. Consultants had earlier found that the building's glass could not withstand thermal stress, which occurs when a warm area of glass expands against a cooler area, creating pressure that can cause it to crack. The tragedy led to an $18 million settlement and a later refurbishment of all the building's windows. The windows are still monitored monthly to this day. 8. Rhea and Maria Stata Center was not the best quality build of all time. Designed by award-winning architect Frank Gehry, the Rhea and Maria Stata Center was opened in 2004. It houses MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Labs, Department of Linguistics and Philosophy, and the Laboratory of Information and Decision Systems. On completion, it was celebrated for its bold angular design that was said to challenge the laws of physics. In 2007, MIT filed a lawsuit for negligence against Gehry after design flaws and major structural problems were identified. 9. Pier 1 Playground in New York was an embarrassing project. Playgrounds are great fun for children and parents alike, and you'd think their design was a relatively simple undertaking. Not so at Pier 1. The designers decided to build climbing structures purely out of steel. As most parents know, you need to test things like swing seats to make sure they aren't too hot. This principle obviously eluded the design team. The climbing frames, and well domes, often became too hot to touch, with one parent measuring the temperature at 127 degrees Fahrenheit, 52 degrees C. That's hot enough to fry an egg. 10. The 2004 Olympics stadia in Greece are now completely vacant. When the Olympics came home to Greece in 2004, dozens of stadia were built to house various events. These ranged from baseball, kayaking to even table tennis, field hockey, and judo. The vast majority of these are now vacant and remain unused to this day. They are now secured with padlocked fences and patrolled regularly by security. The Olympics cost Athens around $11 billion to host.